Hey everyone, and welcome to the Bob Plays. I feel like I need to always have some really cool intro to this thing, but that's about all I got today. Um, Firstly, I need to apologize because last episode I had promised that we would have a parent from overseas that I would be interviewing, but unfortunately schedules got a little bit crossed and we weren't able to make that happen this episode. So you've just got a solo one with me again. Hope that's all right. But I am planning to batch record moving forward so we can really ensure that we have the content there to throw out to you all. As you know, the process in getting this podcast to you is quite lengthy, and I'm sort of doing that solo at the moment. So I really appreciate your understanding. I'm sorry about that. I'm really keen to have a range of people and parents and grandparents and siblings of deaf and older parents of deaf who have grown up deaf adults and all of that stuff. I really want to get a range of perspectives happening on here. And I actually put a blast out on my social media recently with a podcast expression of interest form. So if you are out there and you're like, hey, that's me, I want to be on the podcast. That's you, right? That's what you sound like. Then I will link the podcast expression of interest form in the show notes so you can be you can fill it in and then we can make contact and I would absolutely love to interview you. So I will put that in the show notes. But I'm navigating this thing as I go. For those who know me, they know that I sort of fly by the seat of my pants a lot of the time. And so far, so good, guys. So far, so good. But anyway, let's jump in. I posted a bit of a post, posted a post on Instagram about this topic. And it's just something that I am very, very, I guess, strong in letting people know about because it's something that we don't often see in that it's there, but we're missing it. It's there, but it's under the radar, or it's there, but we're dismissing it. And so I thought this would be a really great platform to raise this with everyone and then give a few simple solutions or strategies that we can be doing to minimize the impacts of this thing. So let's jump in. Grab yourself some water, grab yourself a coffee, and I'm going to talk to you about something called the deaf nod. Now, there's lots of other ways we can label this, but um, the most simple way is that it is called the deaf nod because basically and essentially what it is that our deaf children, our deaf and hard of hearing kids, have been asked to do something, or they've been asked a question, or they've been asked to perform an action, for example, and they haven't fully accessed that. They haven't accessed what you've said, they haven't accessed what you've requested of them, but they're at an age where they see a lack of understanding as something that draws attention to them, and they don't want that, and so that they will nod to let you know that they've understood. And so if we're sort of not focusing on the deaf child, or we're, really, really busy with other things and we're sort of quickly checking for that understanding and they nod, a lot of the time we take the nod as they've understood and now we can move on. Something that happens with this within this sort of situation is something I like to call the follow the crowd scenario. And what we see with a lot of our deaf and hard of hearing kids in early learning, and in schools, honestly, and just anywhere where they're around a whole bunch of other kids, is that the educator or the leader or the instructor or whatever will give a directive, and all the kids do it. And because the deaf child is also doing it, we assume that they've understood. We assume that they've picked up on what we've said and they're just off you go, they're fine, they've got access, boom, boom, boom. But what has more than often happened is that the deaf child has used their visual environment because they're very good at that. They are very good at looking at their visual environment and going, okay, what's happening here? What's changing? They pick up on body language, on facial expressions, all this sort of stuff. They are so tuned in more than you could possibly imagine. Man, this is Frank's thing. He is so in tune with his visual environment. He sees things well before I even see that they're there, right? So they look around, straight away they're looking, right, okay, my peers are doing this, this, and this. All right, they're walking towards the shoe rack. Why are they walking? Okay, they're all walking there. Oh, they're putting on their shoes. Right, they're putting on their shoes. We must be going somewhere. Where are we going? Oh, they've opened the door to the left to the outdoor playground. Right, we're going to the outdoor playground. I need to put my shoes on to go to the outdoor playground. They haven't actually accessed any of that through the instructor or the teacher. They've literally used their visual environment to work it out. And the issue with this is that that is just another, on top of all the other times, another opportunity where they have missed language. They've missed that language exposure. They've missed that deeper understanding of that transition. And they are just following the crowd. And with that, you might find that you go up to the deaf child and go, all right, we're going to go put our shoes on, okay? And they might just look at you and nod, right? They might nod. And then you go, great, they've understood. See you later. And then the deaf child sits there for a second, checks the visual environment, works it out, and off they go. Have they understood you? Generally not. So this is a really important phenomenon, I guess you could say, or something that we need to really be in tune with our deaf and hard of hearing kids. And actually, when I posted this on Instagram, there were a lot of deaf adults that contacted me saying they still do this because there's this almost shame in not having that access and not having that understanding where they don't want to be different. So therefore, they just feign understanding and feign that they know what's happening. And not only is that not okay from the angle of their missing language, but what do you think that's doing to their mental health and their self-concept and their feeling of being valued and belonging, right? If we're just saying, yep, okay, this is happening, not providing access, the child's nodding because they don't want the attention on them, and we move on. And this happens so often, and I see it happen with Frankie too. And I think it's really important that we intersect and we intervene at those points in our deaf and hard of hearing kids' lives where we see that happening and we actually go, hey, hang on, I'm going to change this. I'm going to change the direction of this. I'm going to jump in, and this is a teaching moment for whoever's there. And that's when we start to really shift the narrative, right? So we've got to be thinking about the real subtleties in what our deaf kids are communicating, because a lot of the time it's not going to be through that signed or spoken. There's going to be things happening that are easily dismissed, and this is one of them. So I think a huge thing about this is that this starts really early, and what we want to be doing is teaching our deaf and hard of hearing kids how to self-advocate, how to feel confident in seeking clarification, and really understanding that seeking clarification is not a shameful thing. It's not an embarrassing thing. It's actually their right. And the more we provide accessible, inclusive environments, the less they're going to have to do this, the less they're going to have to do this feigning of understanding and trying to just get by and following the crowd, and the less language they're going to be missing. It's really important that with this strategy, we instill these skills in our deaf children super early, okay? Because we are seeing this from like age 2, age 3 in some kids, and they get very good at it, right? And as I mentioned, deaf adults are still doing it. So what's happening is there's still that connection and connotation around whether it is that shameful feeling of I don't want to be seen to not understand, or it's just exhaustion from having to like constantly deal with an inaccessible environment that doesn't support inclusion for the child or for the deaf adult. So we really want to start shifting this and getting our kids to be okay to seek that clarification. But on the other angle, again, not putting it all on the deaf child, what can we do in our environments to ensure that that is a really accessible and inclusive environment for our kids to be thriving in? I, particularly in those early learning and school settings, I run live face-to-face and online trainings, professional trainings with educators and teachers around this very thing. And we really dive deep into case studies and examples, and I really get them to see it from a different lens, because a lot of the time I have no idea that this is even happening, and they feel so shocked when they realize that this is a thing. And it can be such simple tweaks, but sometimes it's just getting that information into the minds of these people so that they can actually start to make change. Because if we don't know, we don't know, right? And we can't make change. But the minute we do know, we can make change. So it's all about that awareness and that advocacy and that education and that understanding. And really getting people to understand that our deaf kids mask a lot of the day. They really, really do. And yes, people can throw that word around as like, oh, well, all kids mask at school, all kids mask in their learning environment. They come home and they melt down to mum and dad. Well, yes, that is true. My hearing boy does that too. But the masking with a deaf and hard of hearing child is so much more layered. It's so much more layered. There is so much more happening. And actually, that masking and that inability to feel confident in seeking clarification and asking those questions and contributing can impact their long-term language goals. So actually, it's a lot more critical that we target this and shift this for our deaf and hard of hearing kids. Okay, told you I could talk about this all day, and I will. Forever and ever and ever. But let's unpack three. I've got three strategies I want to talk to you about today. I've got a lot more that I unpack in the RB Club. I know I mentioned the RB Club a lot on here because it literally is my favorite place in the world to be. And it's kicking off, guys. Oh my gosh, the week just before last, we did a 7-day True North challenge, and so many of our members got on board, and just the conversations and the reflections and the profound insights that were coming out of this challenge were incredible. And it just was like such a shake up for our community. And yeah, I've just been loving how connected everyone is, how raw and authentic everyone's been in there. And so many times you're in there, you see someone will share a story and then a parent will comment and go, oh my goodness, I thought I was the only one feeling this. I feel like this, you've just spoken to me. And this just keeps happening, these aha moments and these wins within our club. And so I love that we can really have this space where we can all connect and, in a place that's really sacred and it's really warm and welcoming. And really, as I say, unlike anything that's out there at the moment. So I've linked the RB Club in the show notes as well if you wanted to join the waitlist. I will be opening up my second intake in April. So if you're keen to jump on, we've got 2 tiers, standard and VIP tiers. I would love, 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 love to have you in there. I am in there all the time. As I said, favorite place to be. And I'm just loving the growing community that we have there. We have families and parents from Australia, of course, the UK and America and Canada. We've got so many people jumping on the RB Club, so I would love to have you. Anyway, let's get back to it. Strategy 1. And this may seem obvious, but this is a really, really simple strategy that we can be doing because, it's like monkey see, monkey do in a lot of ways. And as we were talking about the follow the crowd scenario before, that's exactly what that is. But this is around how we model seeking clarification for our kids, right? So strategy 1 is actually modeling our own clarification seeking and questioning in front of our deaf and hard of hearing kids, right? So this whole power of leading by example, because our kids do mirror what we do. And this goes for advocacy as well. How they see us advocate is the way they will advocate. How they see us use language is the way they will use language. How they see us seeking clarification, asking those questions and being confident in asking if we don't understand something, then they will also feel that confidence in doing the same thing. So we can do this through like a modeling scenario. So you can be out and about and something might happen and you want to ask for more clarification, right? So you might say something like, and sign, this is in both languages, but I didn't catch that. Can you say that again? Or, I'm not quite understanding what you're saying. Could you unpack that a little bit more for me? Or I got that bit, but what did you mean about this? And it can be just such simple little moments. And maybe you don't always do this because it's just not sort of something you do regularly, but being more aware that when you do that, you're mirroring and showing your child that it's okay to seek for more understanding. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay not to know everything. And if you're not getting access, it's okay to request it. And I think that's the big one. And it could be that you model these phrases from your perspective. So when you're out and about or, they're just with you and you're wanting to know more. Or it could also be that you advocate or ask on their behalf So you might go, hey, I'm struggling to understand this a little bit more. And I'm not sure if my child is too. Do you mind if you just unpack that a little bit more for us? Or what do you mean by this? So you're sort of bringing them into it and you're letting them know that you're in that with them, right? So it's like that. We're just here asking questions, and that's okay. And that's really natural, and feel confident in doing that, and so on and so on. So the more they see you, I guess, showing that side of yourself where you aren't the knower of all things, you're not this big authority that doesn't ever have questions. When they start to see you actually question things and not understand everything and ask for clarification, and this could also be in like a thinking out loud sort of scenario where you go, well, I'm really not understanding this today. I've read this, but I still don't understand. I think I'm going to have to dive a little bit deeper and work this one out, or whatever it might be. When we just start to voice and model and show that a little bit more to our deaf kids, they start to realize that actually not understanding everything is a really natural process, and that they are able to seek that clarification and feel confident in doing that. So that's a really strong one. And within that, a parent in our RB club had a beautiful suggestion, and it was this role playing, right? So you got the modeling, but you can also actually role play with them. So go, okay, so you could pretend that you're the teacher and they're in class, right? And they've said something and the child hasn't understood, and you can go through these different scripts with them, right? So they feel more confident. They're practicing, they're rehearsing with you before they go into the real situation or the real environment and have to do it with their actual teacher or with their actual instructor or coach or whatever it might be. So that strategy is a really great one. And I think for me, even just saying this, I teach myself things sometimes, but I feel like I could do that a lot more with Frank, and I think I'm going to. So I think that that will just be really, I mean, he's already the boss, I guess. He's already like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? What are you like? And sometimes even it's hilarious. I'll be signing with a deaf person in front of him and he'll be watching, and then he'll look at me and go, what are you talking about? And I'll look at him and I'm like, you were watching. You were watching. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, all right, so we'll do it again. And we sign it to him. But sometimes it does become a habit. It's such a habit for him that even if he's taken it in, he's like, I just want a little bit more clarification. I'm not sure I'm understanding this. So, and I love that. Like, I love that he does that. And I am very conscious of ensuring we maintain that with him, because he is really leading the way. And it's very, very exciting. So look, if you do nothing else, do that. It's a really easy, simple slot in strategy you can literally do without any prep work. And I think it really does shift that for our kids, because I've seen so often in schools, particularly, we'll just have deaf and hard of hearing kids sit in a classroom. I've got a case study right now I'll share with you. A girl that I had just come on my caseload, and for some reason she didn't have a hearing aids in that day. I actually think she'd lost them and she hadn't told anyone. Sitting at the back, and I was up the front supporting another child, and I moved over to her and I came over and I said, hey, do you know what you're doing right now? Do you know what your task is? And she just looked at me and she goes, no. I said, all right, well, let's have it. We start with step one. What does the teacher ask you to do? And she looked at me and she goes, I can't hear the teacher at all. She also didn't know Auslan. So she was in this room on her own, masking so hard, right? She was writing things in her book. She was nodding. She was looking up. All the things you would look at and go, hey. And I was with a child with additional needs, and I was supporting them. And then I've looked over and gone, I'm going to go sit with her now. And the minute I sat down and she said that to me, I wanted to scream, because I thought, how often in her, she was in year 8. So how often in her 8 years of her schooling has she done this already? And how much has she missed? And it was just so heartbreaking. Really, it was heartbreaking to see that she didn't have those skills. She didn't feel confident. I mean, the fact that she even told me, but it was because I asked the right questions, right? And this is what this sort of leads me into our next strategy. And that is around how we check for understanding. And the strategy is we need to actually change the way we check for understanding. Because so often, what is the question we ask when we're, particularly as educators, but anyone really, right? What is the question we ask when it's fast paced, we're sort of got a schedule we're running or whatever, and we want to check for understanding. Do you understand? Have you got that? Do you understand? There's the nod. Great, they understand. Let's move on. That obviously in a school environment doesn't happen now. We've got lots of strategies we use for checking for understanding. The whiteboard one is a really good one, which I'll unpack with someone one day, but I love that strategy. But it's still sometimes the fallback that people sort of do, right? They say, you understand, you got that? Yep, you're good. Okay, off we go, right? And so then the deaf child again is left there on their own, no idea what they've just been told, no idea what the task is. So what do? They either sit there, do nothing, and then a lot of times get in trouble for not doing anything, or they look around, look at their peers' work and go, okay, what are they doing? What are they writing? I'm just going to do the same. Happens so often, I can't even tell you. So we need to change the way we check for understandings to really get deep into, okay, have they got this or have they not got this, right? And so for parents, because obviously you're not going to be, this is more for parents, but also I'm sure educators can take these strategies 100% as well. But for parents, instead of just asking, yeah, you got that? Do you understand? We want to start opening up those questions a little bit more with a bit more of a specific spin on them, right? Some that I like to do with Frank, one of the big ones is I ask, what do you think they meant by that? Or what do you think they're trying to say? Or what do you think about that topic? A lot of the time I ask his thoughts on it. What do you think about that? And I'll know straight away that if he gives me a response that's not related, or he gives me a response that's different, then I know that he hasn't grasped that concept. So we're going to unpack it. And I'm a nerd, so I really dive deep into unpacking all of this stuff with him, right? But it's those sort of questions. Could you give me an example of what's an example that's happened to us in real life? What's that similar to? What's another situation where this has happened as well, right? So you're getting them to actually, that's a really good one to do for deaf kids because you're connecting it to real life experience, which is also just such a beautiful strategy to use in general, because it really supports their ability to, we're building and accessing prior learning and bringing those life experiences into new applications and learning new concepts. But anything like that is going to work, right? As long as we're not just asking, do you understand? You've got that? Cool. Just don't do that. Just avoid those questions and start to think a little bit deeper about, okay, what has just gone down? And how am I actually going to check for understanding here? A good one for older deaf kids who have a bit more language as well is, so how would you explain that to someone who doesn't know about this topic? So that's a really good one to sort of throw out to our older deaf kids, because we know, and actually as even an adult, for me, if I'm learning something new, and as I've got ADHD, so sometimes when I read something, I'll read it and then and I'll read it and go, nope. And I'll read it 4 more times and I'll go, nope, still don't know what I just read. And so what I do is I teach to learn. So I will absorb something as best I can, and then I will go and tell my husband about it or tell my mum about it. And I'm like, okay, this is what I've just learned. I'm going to teach you it, and I have to unpack it to them in a way that they understand, but it also helps me to really solidify and consolidate the stuff that I've just read. So we can do that with our kids too, getting them to explain to their younger brother or their younger sister what just happened and things like that. And that also helps with their retail skills. I know I'm just throwing random stuff out here, but that's how I roll. But that strategy is a really good one. It's really just a shift around how we question. Open-ended questions when our children have the language, that's a really important caveat there, are really great when we're looking at seeking that understanding and really getting to understand if they have grasped what's been laid down in front of them. So many other questions there that you can use. But I think also for teachers, this is really good. And I actually say to parents, if this is something you see your child struggling with in school, what you can do is sit with the teacher and actually create some question prompts that they can use as like give them a hard copy and say, these are how you can check for understanding with them really quickly. And it'll just ensure that we aren't missing anything, right? And I know that you feel like a lot of parents might feel like they're overstepping there, but you're just not. You're not overstepping. This is your child. This is their education. Godspeed. Do what you need to do. The final one, and this one I really like, and I used to use this with a few students, particularly those like the girl that I shared, where there's already that real lack of confidence and sort of drive to want to seek clarification. As I mentioned at the beginning, a lot of the time our deaf kids can see asking for access or asking for clarification or asking for just like a bit more unpacking of a concept. They see that as them not being very intelligent. They see it as like that it's a negative thing, that it's a shameful thing, that it's not a very smart, I'm doing inverted commas with my fingers thing, right? And I've had a lot of deaf kids that I've taught tell me this. They're like, I don't want anyone looking at me. I don't want to, like, I'm just going to sit there and not say anything. And so what I have worked with students in the past, and actually I do this with both my boys because my hearing son, Billy, is a very smart little boy, but he loves asking questions. But then in class, sometimes he just gets too nervous because he wants to be the smart kid. He wants to be the one that knows everything. And I'm like, yes, but bringing you to strategy 3, it's actually a sign of intelligence when we ask questions and when we're curious, right? So strategy 3 is all about reframing this idea of seeking clarification as a strength. I mean, we don't have to focus on it being a smart thing or anything like that, because I know as well when we're talking about that, it's not about being the smartest, right? But it is about them being like, hey, you're curious, you are really interested in this topic. That is a sign that you have intelligence and that you are here to apply those skills and you are really ready to learn and you're here to have those questions answered, and that is a strength. That means that you are really using your brain to the best of its ability to learn a new concept. Okay, so when we reframe this into a strength, it really does flip it on its head, because being curious and asking questions is how we build our skills and our knowledge, and we become more cognizant of our world, right? So I love to flip that narrative, and particularly with my hearing son, that has really, really helped. So things that you can say, right? So things or sign, obviously say and sign. Whenever I say that, I mean both languages. But things that you can unpack, discuss with them when they ask these questions is, hey, that's a great question. That is a great question. I love how you're making sure you have all the info, right? Or, hey, I love that you asked that. You're obviously really interested in this topic. Or, oh my goodness, what a great question. You are so curious. I love those questions that you're asking me. So it's just that sort of stuff. And I use this with my kids all the time, just like in everyday life, right? So they ask something, I'm like, whoa, what a cool question. Yeah, I never thought about that. Hey, let's find out together. And that again uses almost the first strategy and the third strategy together, right? Where we're like, okay, they've asked a question, and then you join them and go, oh my goodness, I didn't know about that either, or I would like to know more about that. Oh, I don't understand. I actually do this a lot with my kids. And I did this a lot when I was a teacher at schools. If I did get a genuine question that I was like, no, no answer. I would say, oh, wow, that is a really cool question. Can I write it on the board and we can look at that at the end and research together? Because I think this idea of being curious and inquisitive and just being okay to ask questions needs to be seen as a strength, because it 100% is. And I think too often, and we've all been kids before, where being smart or being curious or being intelligent is seen as a shameful thing, and like you don't want to be. The cool kids don't want us to be. You don't want to be seen as being smart, because that's not cool. And I really just want to flip that and get rid of that, because it's not supporting our kids. And we want to see this as a superpower and as a part of them that's a really strong quality that is going to ensure that they have all the knowledge and they can continue to grow and do whatever they want to do in their life, because they're asking all the questions. And so I love that third one, particularly for those kids who, for whatever reason, feel shame around asking questions about seeking clarification, and really starting to show them that it is a strength. And that's how we can do that, by reframing that idea of asking questions. Okay, so they're the 3 strategies. I hope they have helped. And I mean, some of you might have come into this going, I didn't even know about the Deaf Nod. I didn't even know about this. And so, hey, look at you. You've got a new awareness of something and three strategies, off you go. And I really want these solo episodes to be useful to everyone because I think they're really, there's so much power in just knowledge and learning new things. And I think this is a really easy format for a lot of our parents to I love our parents who have chaotic lives, because I'm there with you, to access this information. And if you're anything like me, sometimes reading stuff is just doesn't go in. And so podcasts and being able to view things, it just works better. So I really hope that I was able to give you some insight today and that I encourage parents to maybe just pick one of those this week, right? And just really focus on tuning in. And this is the thing, I know you feel sometimes like there's all these strategies we've got to use, and oh, how do I fit all the strategies in? And I always just say, peel it back, use one. Just use one, make one your focus this week, right? Because if you do one really well, the impact that has is so much more stronger and long term than if we're doing like 20 strategies or trying to fit 20 strategies in a half-ass way. So I would always just say pick one and drive that thing home until it becomes innate and habitual and then move on. That's my little tip for you. So thankful for everyone who is tuning into this episode and every episode of the Pod Place. You guys are incredible. I really ask if you are loving this, if you're getting value, if it's making your world a little bit brighter and a little bit better, please feel free to follow along, subscribe, and leave a review. It really does make all the difference. And I will see you in 2 weeks with a parent interview. And I'm saying it right here and right now because it's going to happen. Okay. Love to all of you guys. Have a great week and we'll speak soon. Hey everyone.